up, guys? Back with a new video.
I actually just got home from work not long ago, and this video that I'm about to film, I filmed once before, didn't like it, said I was going to do it again because I didn't really prepare that time. This time I also did not really prepare. I kept trying to sit down and gather all the questions for this, and it wasn't happening. But since this video was supposed to go up yesterday, at this point, and my weekend didn't go as planned, nor did today after work. So at this point, we're just gonna go with it, film it, freestyle it, and y'all gonna get what y'all get, in Jesus' name. I've gotten a lot of questions on my implementation video. Just a lot of different questions about what is it and how to get into it, what are the requirements, things like that, what company I worked for. So I figured I would just make a new video because that video was done in 2022. It's been 2 years now actually, and I still get DMs and comments asking me questions about it. So I figured I'll just do a video to try to get everyone's questions at one time. Before we get into questions, I have to make dinner. I was supposed to get groceries today, but again, today after work didn't go as planned, and this is my in-office week, so yeah, well, you come to your own conclusions about that. But we gonna make whatever the heck we got up in here. So today it's giving Trader Joe's teriyaki chicken. Ooh, barbecue teriyaki chicken. And I'm gonna make some brown rice. I typically keep brown rice, and I have some green beans, so gotta get a vegetable in. I did have some questions in my notes from when I was trying to prep this video before, so let me see if I can find those real quick, because that'll just get us started. Implementation video. It's not even done with the script in here, but I know that I scripted that somewhere. Let's just do what we gotta do. All right, so to start, first question, what is implementation? Implementation really can be an array of things, honestly, but basically you could be an implementation consultant if you're working for a company that does software sales, or basically business to business sales. What you do as an implementation consultant is take the technology that your company sells and implement it for the company that has purchased it so that they have their version of it. You probably train them on how to use it in the beginning, and then some companies, that's it, you send them on their way. Others, you continue that relationship. They may constantly be in communication with you as their point of contact when they have to go back to the company that they bought this software from, that you work for. Most times as an implementation consultant, you will work for a company that does software sales. So when I said that implementation can be a lot of things, what I meant by that is you could work for a company that sells human capital management software. You could work for a company that sells tech software. You could work for a company that sells healthcare systems. It could be a number of things in a number of different industries. You could be a software engineer that is an implementation consultant. You could work in a variety of fields as an implementation consultant, but the main key ingredient is that the company you work for sells basically software as a service. So people often ask, what company did I work for? It's 2 years out, don't mind sharing at this point, that I worked for Paylocity. That company did implementation for human capital management software. Paylocity considers themselves a tech company because they actually own their software. They built it and own it, whereas other human capital management companies did not actually create and don't own the software that they So some competitors of Paylocity would be like Workday, Paycom, Paycor. Is that a thing? Think of companies that do payroll, HR services, recruiting. So ADP is a big competitor for Paylocity. Things like that. All right, so when I work for Paylocity, there's different levels of implementation that you can do. You can work as an emerging markets implementation consultant, which are small businesses, 10 to 15 people or less. Sometimes they might squeeze in some that have 20, 22 employees, but typically it's like 10 to 15 or less. Then there's larger companies, but not quite enterprise level companies. That's where you're in IC1, and then enterprise level is IC2. I may be remembering that wrong. But basically, I don't think anyone comes in as IC2 or 3 where you're working for enterprise level companies unless you're coming from somewhere else with experience. You have to start at like a 1 or emerging markets and work your way up. So I worked in emerging markets, which is the smaller companies, and we pretty much took the data of all of their employees, imported into our system. Somebody else, a lower level like data entry type role, would actually get all the data and get it into a spreadsheet for the implementation consultants. We then take all that data, we build out the system that the company who's purchased the software is going to use. We import their employees, their information, and one thing that's really important for human capital management companies or companies that sell a payroll service, you have to balance wages to make sure that when we're doing tax reporting and all that stuff, that it's all right. So anyway, that was basically my day-to-day. I can't say every day, but you would also have calls. So you would have intro calls where you get to meet the liaison, the person from the company who's purchased the software that you're going to be teaching how to use it. You do an introduction call, so you let them know that you're the person that's going to be setting them up with the software, blah, 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 explain what's going to happen. Hey, I'm going to have your system set up in 2 days. In 2 days, we're going to get on a Zoom call and I'm going to walk you through processing your payroll. And typically you set that Zoom call for when they process their payroll, so they're actually doing it. For us, we would typically do 2 calls, one where the implementation consultant processes the payroll for them, and then the next where they're doing it. So then after that, you don't have to bother me anymore. You know what you have to do. And then from there, if you have to call back and things like that, it's handled by customer service. So that was payroll implementation. Now, the people that always ask me about Paylocity and what company I worked for, at the time that I worked for them, they hired everywhere for implementation consultants. They do still have the belief that they will find better talent if they expand their pool. But for implementation consultants specifically, I don't know if it's all levels or just the emerging markets. I believe it's all levels now. They only hire in cities where they have an office. That's the greater Chicago area, which I feel like Schaumburg is maybe like an hour from Chicago, maybe. But greater Chicago area, greater Boise area, greater Orlando, and then greater Phoenix. So if you do not live in one of those cities or nearby, you're not going to find a job with Paylocity. I'm just telling you now. I'm not even doing much cooking. I'm just straight up talking at this point. Next question. One question that I get a lot is if a degree is required to do the job. I think for Paylocity, in emerging markets specifically, a degree was not required. Now, I think most of us did have a degree, but that particular role is the entry level for Paylocity. So of course they're more lenient if you're going into the emerging markets role. For everywhere else, I would go ahead and assume that a degree is required, especially if you're trying to get into implementation for something more technical. If you don't have a degree, you're going to need some years experience to show that you can do the work that they're going to hire you to do for somebody else every day. A really important skill for implementation, no matter what field, no matter what technical skills may be required, no matter what industry knowledge you need, is communication. Because as I said before, you're having a lot of conversations with people to explain to them, one, who you are, who the company is. I mean, the salespeople do the part of letting them know who the company is for the most part. But you do also have to reiterate that in your conversations. You need to be able to explain your software, what it's doing, and help them understand how to use it. You basically need to have good customer service skills. In some implementation roles, you may be required to put out fires at times. At this point, I'm gonna just wait and cook after I'm done. Since I did not get all of my questions written down, I don't know what else to answer. Let me see if I can find some in the comments of that video.
Ooh, hopefully that didn't just stop my voiceover, did it? It did.
Okay, so actually did not find many more questions, relevant questions in that video. Some of them, a lot of those comments were actually about Revature. I did just see one that I wanted to address, but if I click go back to the video, it's going to make my audio recording stop. What did it say? Oh, they asked about experience. I don't think that was the question, but do you need experience? It honestly depends on what kind of implementation you're doing, what kind of software you're implementing. But also when it comes to anything, especially when you're transitioning into a new field, new industry, something that you may not have necessarily done before, it's really helpful to find out what a day in the life is of somebody who does that kind of job. Because even if you don't have experience, if you learn what they do day to day, you can kind of figure out how to line up your transferable skills. So while I never did implementation before, I had a lot of customer service background, so they knew that I would be good with working with people and de-escalating situations if I needed to. They knew that I was good with ownership of a project because of some of my claims background. If you can understand what it is that you would potentially be doing every day, you can figure out how to tie in or communicate what you've done before that's relatable. I have been asked before about interview questions for this role, and really, again, it depends on what kind of software you're implementing, but some questions dealing with times you had to de-escalate a situation or put out a fire. If you may have made a mistake while working on a project, like how did you own up to that maybe? They might ask a question about if you didn't meet a deadline, because when it comes to implementation, you have to have this software shipped ready to go by a certain deadline for the company that purchased it, because they're usually planning on having it ready for something. So I worked in human capital management. They needed their system set up to process payroll, or people were not going to get paid on time as usual. And so the goal was to keep their business running as smoothly as possible, as if they never changed payroll companies. My assumption would be that in any other implementation role that you're in, no matter the industry, the software is going to have a similar way of doing things, that you need to be good with deadlines, you need to be good under pressure. Can you balance handling multiple projects at a time? Because depending on what type of software you're implementing, you may have multiple clients going at once, or you may just have one really big client that you work on for a long period of time, maybe a few months at a time, before you move on to the next one. So again, it varies job to job, role to role. You just want to do your due diligence on getting the details of what it is you're potentially getting into. Honestly, the whole reason I got into implementation is because I was learning Salesforce, and I wanted to be specifically a Salesforce consultant. Now, Salesforce is a very particular product, At the time I didn't have, and I currently still don't have any kind of Salesforce certificates, but at that time I was considering going into Salesforce administration or getting a job with a company where my role was specifically to deal with Salesforce at that company. So if you can find a company that does big sales like that, like a Salesforce, a ServiceNow, those types of certifications, if you're like a system administrator, is similar to being an implementation consultant. Now, I say similar because I've never been a system administrator, a Salesforce administrator, a Confluence administrator. I think Confluence is Jira. I could have made that up. But I say it's similar because typically in that type of role, you are handling the setup of profiles for different users, the permissions for those users. Yeah, different things like that, which is similar to implementation. It honestly depends from company to company how deep you'll get into it, because they may specifically have somebody for the setup and then you are just doing the maintenance day to day. If you are interested in implementation, getting a certification in one of those types of roles will kind of put you in that direction where you're getting a tech job, but it's not necessarily technical or you're having to code. You will get some technical knowledge along the way, but it's not as complicated as like software engineering. I think that's all I have to go over. If you think of any more questions that I didn't answer, because like I said, I really just freestyled this and really did not prepare. But if you have some questions about implementation that were not answered, you can leave them in the comments and I will be happy to answer to the best of my ability. Because I didn't even stay in the role very long, I realized ultimately that implementation was not what I wanted to do for human capital management software. I probably wouldn't mind it if it was a different software. And really, when I thought about all the different things I could do as far as getting into tech in a technical role, none of it really gave me the same excitement as pursuing software engineering, and not even just pursuing it, but actually doing it. I genuinely enjoy coding and problem solving and doing those things. So there was nothing particularly bad about the job or the company. I would actually go back and work for Paylocity. If I were going back as a software engineer, I would highly consider them. That's all the questions I could come up with, all the questions and answers. So again, if you all have more, drop them in the comments. Maybe there are other people out there who can maybe address some of those questions if I don't have the answers. I hope you found this useful, got something out of it. If not, that's cool too, but thanks for watching the full video. Yeah, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't, right? And I'm gonna see y'all in the next one then. Bye.